Hey, what's up everybody? Playing a little bit of Crucible, doing a little bit of a brief tutorial on one of my more favorite characters, Summer. So Summer is, I would describe her as, she's more of an initiator. She can duel a little bit. You have to think of Summer as someone with very high cooldowns. She's really good at disengaging from combat with both her E. And you can see her E will knock herself back as well as pushing her opponent back, and then she also has an ability that gives her a little bit of mobility, which would be your left shift. So your left shift gives you kind of a little bit of mobility, as you can see right here. It's really good for traversing like higher areas, so you can kind of jump and then double tap it to get to an area just above everybody. And the reason being is because she's not really the first person who wants to come in and fight. She can add a little bit of, she can kind of pepper in a little bit of damage. Her right mouse click gives like a little fireball, and as you can see that the flashing HP indicates where the HP will end, because this ability does a little bit of damage, but it primarily puts a dot on your target. You can later on spec that dot to kind of leave a little ground area where it'll pulse for a bit of a damage, but it's so small area that it leaves behind that I really don't find it all that great. Probably more like if you were fighting a boss, like one of the bosses, like if you're fighting for the heart, or if you're fighting anything with like high HP, you know, and of course if it wasn't moving, then it would basically take extra damage. But in the large maps that Crucible has, I really don't find it to be that great of a perk to choose. It works good for like I said, if you're fighting against a heart, but not so much if you're fighting against like a player. Player will just see the pulsing and then just move around it, so it's kind of a useless perk. The other reason that she's really good is when you're initiating against a target, she has her Q will cause her to kind of spin around in a circle, and it leaves this huge area of denial. So it's really good if you're disengaging, like if your team is maybe losing a team fight, and then you subsequently utilize that ability, because she has a lot of mobility. I should say she has decent mobility, but you'll be able to use that to create a large area of denial, because it does tick for a good amount of damage, and there is a perk as you level that increases the area of effect by 50% and increases the damage over time effect by 20%. So what I was saying before is that she's really good at getting to kind of like high places, so that you can maximize the amount of area of effect that her Q hits, right? So let's say like if your team was initiating, and let's say they were down here fighting, and then you can jump, pop your Q, and then subsequently, as you can see, and it creates a huge area of denial, right? So the higher you are, the more effective that ability is, right? The other thing that I have a problem with her is you really have to pay attention to her heat. So part of her passive is that all of her abilities generate heat, right? So whether that's your left click, your right click, your E, right, and your left shift, all of it will generate heat, and when that heat gauge reaches full, it basically doesn't allow you to do anything, right? So you can pop this twice and pop your E, and then you can see for the next 5 seconds your character cannot do anything. You can throw in a light attack.
And we're back.
Not all that great, but 5 seconds is a long time. I'm gonna stay away from. Oh, I know that sound.
Don't forget this.
I know that sound all too well. She overextended herself.
I've got to use a med kit.
See, that's why you gotta be so careful when you're fighting on Summer. Because 5 seconds to get taken out of a fight is a long, especially if you're trading against like another duelist, right? If you're fighting against another character that can duel a little bit better, you put yourself at hard disadvantage, especially if you're trying to get away, right? So if you find yourself trying to disengage, usually I will pop my left shift and then wait and then pop it again to get a little bit of mobility. So that I can kind of get away. As you can see, I can cover quite a bit of distance with just hitting this twice. Right, you can cover quite a bit of difference while also maintaining your bars. So you really want to pay attention. Just think of it like as a cooldown, right? If I reach my cooldown limit, then I can't do anything, and that's you don't want to be, especially if you're in the middle of a team fight. 5 seconds is a long time in a team fight when you're basically the person who can create areas of denial. You can utilize this same ability where you can initiate, right? So you can come across the enemy team, you can maybe dot somebody up that you see from it, and you can, of course, you can utilize this ability from a distance. You just got to pay attention that it falls in an arc, so you kind of got to get used to the drop off. It doesn't it doesn't go in a straight line, as you can see, right? There's quite a bit of drop off. And then you have access to your left click, which deals a decent amount of damage. It's not like amazing, but it's because it's easy, because you just got to hold left click. Doesn't really require you to aim that much comparison to if you were utilizing someone who is more who requires someone who requires aiming. Her E is a knockback. So let's say, for example, you had like a tank on you, or for example, maybe you were getting low and you had another Summer initiate on you. You can utilize your E ability to knock that person back. And then, of course, you can also spec it so that your E will also deflect projectiles. So if you're trading against somebody from range, you can utilize your E and it will basically block all of the projectiles. And I think that's basically most of Summer. Like I said, she's a really good, I'd say she's like a little bit late. I like to utilize her late to the party. Kind of like to go in a little bit last. And if try to pay attention to where people are kind of positioned on the battlefield, and then just try to pepper in a little bit of damage from range, throw my dot out, and then look for someone who's getting a little bit low. I'll kind of pop over them, hit my Q, so that kind of limits their ability to disengage, and at the same time it'll cause other areas. It's really good for also splitting enemy teams up. So if you've got someone that's maybe like from range and they've got someone who's fighting from melee and they're in like a kind of like a narrow corridor, you can actually utilize this, initiate, drop this huge field on the ground, and then kind of backpedal, hit your E, back away, and then continue to disengage that person with your left click. And then it makes it a little bit harder for that person who is in the back line, as that melee character will continue to press in on you, and you can kind of back away, and then still use your E, still use your left click for dealing damage, and then that person kind of has to move around your area of effect. She's really, like I said, she's really good for both initiating as well as disengaging. She's got quite a little bit of movement speed, but I wouldn't say she's the most mobile because of her limited cooldown. Right, you can probably hit this about 2 times, and you can see it takes quite a bit for the heat to dissipate. Right, so if I would have just hit this subsequently really twice quickly, and then hit my right click, I would be almost out of gas. And like I said, your left click still generates a bit of passive heat. A little bit of passive heat, but not as much as your ability. So your primary DPS ability is going to be your left click with a little bit of right click. So if you're engaging in a fight, you would immediately hit your right click, put your dot on them, and then start ticking away. And you can utilize your Q, kind of create a little bit of space, force them to fight in your area, and then being able to deal some subsequent decent damage over time. She's really fun. She's one of my favorite to play. It just takes a little bit of getting used to, because you have to be used to like the cooldown. You got to pay attention to your cooldowns. With that said, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the like, and of course subscribe if this is your first time checking out my channel, so that you don't miss out on future content. And of course, likes are always appreciated. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.